The first encounter. The battlefield was silent. Smoke curled in the air, rising from the burning wreckage of destroyed ships. The ground was covered in dust, blood, and broken weapons. It was a scene of death. Commander Joran stood in the middle of it all, his tall, armored figure unmoving. His sharp, violet eyes scanned the area, searching for any signs of life. His people, the Xelvarians, had won the battle, as expected. The weak human forces had stood no chance against their superior strength. Joran exhaled. Another war, another victory. He felt nothing. No joy, no pride. Only the same dull emptiness that always followed. Then, movement. A faint sound, a rustle among the debris. His sharp hearing caught it immediately. He turned, his black battle armor reflecting the dim light of the burning sky. Lying between broken metal and shattered weapons was a human. Joran narrowed his eyes. This was unusual. Humans never survived battles with the Xelvarians. They were too fragile, too weak. And yet this one was still breathing. He stepped closer, his boots crunching against the cracked earth. The human was injured, their body covered in dirt and blood. Their uniform was torn, revealing bruises and deep cuts. They should have been unconscious. But when Joran knelt down, the human's eyes snapped open. For a second, neither of them moved. The human's gaze locked onto his, and Joran felt something strange. He had seen fear in human eyes before, begging, panic, terror. But this human was not afraid. Their eyes burned with something else. Defiance. Joran tilted his head. You should not be alive. The human coughed, wincing in pain but still managed to smirk. Yeah, and you should mind your own business. Joran's lips pressed into a thin line. He was not used to this. Humans always begged for mercy. They never spoke back to him like this. You are injured. You will die soon, he stated simply. The human gritted their teeth and pushed themselves up on one elbow. Maybe. Maybe not. Their voice was weak, but their spirit was not. Joran frowned. Something inside him stirred, something unfamiliar. He had killed humans before. Many times, it was his duty. And yet, something about this one made him hesitate. He reached for his energy blade, ready to end it quickly. A painless death. That was the best he could offer. But then the human laughed. A dry, painful chuckle, but laughter nonetheless. Joran froze, confused. Go ahead, alien, the human rasped. Kill me. Prove that you're just like the rest of your kind. Cold, empty, soulless. Joran's grip on his blade tightened. He had been called many things in battle. A monster, a destroyer, a demon, but never this. Never empty. He should not have cared. And yet, something inside him burned. He leaned closer, his voice low. You are just a human. Why do you speak as if you matter? The human's lips curled into a weak smile. Because I do. Joran stared at them. The battle was over. His duty was complete. There was no reason for him to waste time on a dying enemy. And yet, he could not walk away. The human was weak, injured, and helpless. But their spirit was unbroken. Their eyes still burned with that strange fire, one he had never seen before. And for the first time in his life, Joran did not know what to do. A prisoner or something more. The silence stretched between them. The human lay broken but not beaten. Their body was weak, but their spirit burned like a flame refusing to die. Commander Joran had seen many humans before. He had crushed them beneath his boots, heard their final screams, watched their bodies turn cold. And yet, standing over this one, something unfamiliar twisted inside him. A question. Why do I hesitate? His grip on his blade tightened. He should end this, quick and clean. A mercy kill. It was the logical choice. But logic felt distant now. The human stared at him, breathing heavily, eyes filled with something he could not understand. Defiance. Not fear, not despair, just the stubborn, unbreakable will to survive. Joran's pulse thrummed in his ears. He was trained to ignore emotions, his kind, that Selvarians were warriors, bred for war, raised to conquer. They did not feel hesitation. They did not second-guess. And yet, he found himself lowering his weapon. The human let out a weak chuckle. "What's the matter, alien?" Hands shaking. Joran's jaw clenched. His hands did not shake, but for the first time in his life, his mind did. He exhaled sharply and pressed a button on his wrist communicator. "Bring a transport. I have a prisoner." The moment the words left his mouth, he felt a shift. A decision had been made, and there was no turning back. The human blinked, surprised. "You're taking me prisoner?" Joran didn't answer. He simply stepped back as a dark, metallic hovercraft appeared above them, engines humming softly. Within seconds, it landed, sending a cloud of dust into the air. The human coughed but still tried to sit up, clearly unwilling to be dragged like some helpless creature. Stubborn, foolish, interesting. A Zelvarian soldier stepped out of the craft, tall and armored like Joran, his sharp blue eyes narrowing as he saw the human. "Commander, is this necessary?" the soldier asked. The human, "It would be easier to." Joran's gaze turned sharp. "I did not ask for your opinion, Varric." The soldier immediately bowed his head in submission. "Understood." Joran turned back to the human, who was watching the exchange with amusement. "Wow," they said, smirking despite the pain. "You boss your people around like that all the time." Joran didn't react. Instead, he reached down, gripping the human's arm and pulling them up, not gently, but not cruelly either. The human hissed in pain but did not cry out. Again, that strange feeling returned. Weak, but strong. Helpless, but fearless. He did not understand them, and that frustrated him. As he dragged them toward the hovercraft, the human's voice broke the silence. "So, do I get a name, or do I just call you Scary Alien Commander?" Joran didn't look at them. "You do not need my name." "Oh, come on," the human said, wincing as they tried to walk on their own. "I'm your prisoner now. Might as well introduce yourself." Joran stayed silent. He had no reason to humor them. Then again, he had no reason to spare them either. After a moment, he exhaled. "Commander Joran of the Selvarian Empire." The human grinned, even through the pain. "Nice to meet you, Joran. Name's Alex." Joran didn't reply. But something inside him shifted again. The journey to the warship. The hovercraft soared across the sky, leaving the battlefield behind. Inside, Joran sat across from Alex, who was strapped into a seat, wrists bound in energy restraints. Despite their injuries, Alex still had that annoying smirk on their face. "So, do you guys always take prisoners, or am I special?" Joran didn't answer. He didn't know why he had taken them. Logic told him it was for interrogation. Humans were enemies. Maybe this one had valuable information. But deep down, he knew that was a lie. He had taken them because he could not bring himself to kill them. And that was a dangerous thought. "You are silent," Alex said, tilting their head, thinking hard about something. Joran's jaw tightened. "Be quiet, human." Alex snorted. "That's gonna be tough. I like to talk." Joran closed his eyes for a brief moment, resisting the urge to sigh. This one is going to be a problem. A few minutes later, the ship docked onto the massive Zelvarian warship hovering in orbit. As they stepped out, the ship's soldiers stared at Alex, murmuring among themselves. A human prisoner? Unheard of. Joran ignored them. He walked forward, leading Alex toward the high-security cells. But then, a familiar voice called out, "Commander Joran." He stopped, turning to see General Kareth, his superior, standing tall with piercing silver eyes. Kareth's gaze flickered to Alex, then back to Joran. "Why is there a human aboard my ship?" Joran met the general's gaze without flinching. "They are my prisoner." Kareth's lips curled into a cold smile. "Interesting choice, but I hope you have a reason. Because if this human is useless—" He stepped closer, voice dropping lower. "I will make sure they do not stay alive for long." Joran's fists clenched at his sides. A feeling he could not name burned inside him. Alex, despite being injured and outnumbered, still grinned up at the general like this was all some big joke. "Well," they said, "I guess I better prove I'm useful, huh?" Joran didn't know why, but the idea of Kareth harming them made his blood boil. And that was the most dangerous feeling of all. The unbreakable spirit. The cold steel walls of the Tselvarian warship hummed with a quiet, pulsing energy. It was a massive structure, built for war, designed for conquest. It had housed thousands of prisoners before, captured enemies, broken and discarded. But never a human like this one. Commander Joran walked with firm, measured steps, his black armor gleaming under the artificial lights. Behind him, two Tselvarian guards dragged the injured human, Alex, toward the high-security cells. Despite their wounds, despite the pain, Alex still smirked as if they had already won. Joran had fought in hundreds of battles, faced warriors who had conquered worlds, and yet nothing had ever unsettled him like this human's relentless defiance. It was not arrogance, it was something else. Something stronger. The cell. A battle of wills. The door to the high-security cell slid open with a mechanical hiss. The walls were reinforced with plasma shielding, impossible for any normal being to break through. The room was cold, designed to make prisoners feel alone, weak, small. Alex was shoved inside. They stumbled but caught themselves before falling. Joran stepped forward, arms crossed. His gaze was unreadable. "You should not be smiling." Alex, still bound by energy restraints, sat down on the metallic bench and leaned back as if they were completely at ease. "Why not?" they asked, tilting their head. "I'm alive. That's something to smile about." Joran's eyes narrowed. For now. He expected fear. He expected hesitation. Instead, Alex laughed. A sharp, amused sound that made the guards outside shift uncomfortably. Joran had never met a human who laughed in the face of death. He stepped closer, his deep voice calm but firm. "You are a prisoner of the Tselvarian Empire. You will answer my questions, or you will suffer the consequences." Alex raised an eyebrow. "Wow, so scary." Joran's jaw tightened. This human was frustrating. He had seen their kind beg for mercy, scream in terror. He had seen humans break under pressure. But this one, they refused to break. Why? What made them different? He leaned down, his towering form casting a shadow over them. "I could end your life right now." Alex met his gaze, eyes burning with something almost amused. "Then why haven't you?" Silence. Joran clenched his fists at his sides. He didn't have an answer. He should have killed them back on the battlefield. He should have handed them over to General Kareth for execution. But he had done neither. And he didn't know why. Alex leaned forward slightly, voice dropping to a soft, almost mocking whisper. "You're curious about me, aren't you?" Joran's eyes flashed. "Do not flatter yourself, human." Alex grinned. Too late. The general's warning. The moment Joran stepped out of the cell and sealed the door behind him, he was met with an unwelcome presence. General Kareth stood there, arms crossed, silver eyes filled with disapproval. Joran didn't flinch. He knew this confrontation was inevitable. Kareth's voice was cold. "A human prisoner. I expected better from you, Joran." Joran kept his expression blank. "They may have information. I will find out." Kareth stepped closer, his tall, armored form imposing even to someone like Joran. "You hesitate." Joran stiffened. "I do not." Kareth smirked. "Then why is that human still breathing?" Silence stretched between them. Zoran had no answer. Kareth's voice lowered to a dangerous whisper. Humans are weak. We crush them. That is the way of our people. Do not let one insignificant creature distract you from your duty. Zoran's fists clenched behind his back. I know my duty. Kareth studied him for a moment before his expression turned amused. Perhaps, but if I sense any attachment forming, I will remove the problem myself. The warning was clear. Zoran gave a stiff nod. Understood. Kareth smirked and walked away, leaving behind a tension that felt heavier than any battle Zoran had fought. As he turned back toward the cell, he exhaled slowly. The general was right. He should not feel anything for a human. And yet, as he stared through the reinforced glass at Alex, sitting there, still smirking, still unbroken, he felt something stir deep inside him. Curiosity, confusion, and something far more dangerous. The forbidden connection. The warship hummed with cold efficiency, a silent beast floating in the endless void of space. Inside its steel walls, everything was structured, controlled, without emotion. Except for the human. Commander Zoran stood outside the high-security cell, his violet eyes fixed on the prisoner. Alex. They sat on the bench, still bound in energy restraints, but their expression was far from defeated. Their gaze flickered toward the reinforced glass. Meeting Zoran's eyes, a slow smirk pulled at their lips. Zoran exhaled sharply. He should not be here. He should not care. And yet, his feet had carried him back, drawn to this human for reasons he refused to understand. Back so soon? Alex asked, leaning back against the wall. Miss me already? Zoran ignored the provocation. He tapped the security panel, and the cell door slid open with a hiss. He stepped inside, his tall figure casting a shadow over Alex. Enough games, he said, his voice firm. You will tell me what I need to know. Alex raised an eyebrow. And what exactly do you need to know? Zoran didn't answer immediately. He had no orders to interrogate them. No expectation of vital information. Kareth had already decided that this human was worthless. So why was he here? Why had he come back? Alex tilted their head, observing him. You're not like the others, are you? Zoran stiffened. Do not assume you know me, human. But Alex just laughed. Oh, I don't need to assume. I can see it. The way you hesitate, the way you think before speaking. They nodded toward the energy restraints on their wrists. The way you keep me alive. Zoran's jaw tightened. You are a prisoner. And yet Alex said, their voice dropping to something softer, something more dangerous. I don't feel like one. The air between them grew heavy, charged with something unspoken. Zoran had fought warriors twice his size, stared down death 1,000 times, but never had he felt this. This strange, suffocating pull toward something he did not understand. Alex leaned forward, their gaze locked onto his. What are you so afraid of, Zoran? His name on their lips sent an unfamiliar sensation through him. It was not anger, not fear. Something else. Something dangerous. A moment that should not have happened. Hours passed. Zoran did not leave the cell. They talked. About war. About life. About everything and nothing. Alex's world was different from his, filled with chaos, emotion, freedom. Zoran listened. He did not know why, but he did. At some point, Alex shifted, wincing from an injury they had been trying to hide. A deep wound on their side, half covered by their torn uniform. Zoran's eyes flickered to it. Why did you not mention this? Alex shrugged. Didn't think you cared. Zoran exhaled sharply. He did not care. He should not care. And yet he crouched down, scanning the wound with his wrist device. The data scrolled across the screen. Deep laceration, possible internal bleeding. He frowned. Humans were weak. Too fragile. This will become infected, he said flatly. Alex raised an eyebrow. I'm aware. But I doubt your people give out free medical care to prisoners. Joran hesitated. Then, without another word, he reached into his belt, pulling out a small vial of Selvarian healing serum. Alex watched in silence as he injected it near their wound. The serum shimmered, absorbing into the skin, sealing the injury slowly. Alex blinked in surprise. "Did you just?" Joran stood abruptly. "Do not speak of this." Alex smirked. "Oh, so you do care." Joran clenched his fists. "I care about efficiency. A dead prisoner is useless." Alex grinned. "Sure. Keep telling yourself that." The tension in the air grew unbearable. Joran knew he should walk away. He should not let this human get under his skin. But as Alex held his gaze, something passed between them. Something he could not ignore. Something forbidden. Kareth's suspicion. Joran was barely outside the cell when he felt the presence behind him. General Kareth. The older warrior's silver eyes were sharp, watching him too closely. Too aware. "You are spending a lot of time with the human," Kareth said, his voice dangerously smooth. Joran didn't react. "I am gathering information." Kareth smirked. "Is that what you call it?" Joran met his gaze evenly. "You doubt me." Kareth stepped forward, lowering his voice. "I doubt humans. I doubt their games. I doubt the way they infect strong minds with their emotions." Joran did not flinch, but inside, something twisted. Kareth leaned closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "Do not let this creature corrupt you, Joran. I would hate to see your loyalty questioned." The unspoken threat hung in the air. Joran gave a stiff nod and walked away. But his thoughts were not so easily dismissed. As he strode down the warship's corridor, his fists clenched at his sides. Kareth was right about one thing. This human was a problem. Because somehow, against all logic, Joran was beginning to feel something he should not. Something dangerous, betrayal and escape. The warship's halls felt colder than usual. Joran moved with precision, his mind sharp, his posture rigid. But inside, something was wrong. Kareth's words echoed in his head. "Do not let this creature corrupt you, Joran. I would hate to see your loyalty questioned." He was a commander, a warrior, a Selvarian. He did not feel. He did not doubt. And yet, he had healed a human. Joran's grip tightened around his wrist communicator as he approached the high-security cells. He had intended to stay away, to prove to himself that he was not compromised. But something in his gut told him he needed to check on Alex. As the cell door slid open, he saw them sitting on the metallic bench, their wrists still bound in energy restraints. Despite the cold of confinement, the uncertainty of their future, they still smirked as soon as they saw him. "Back so soon?" Alex teased. "I was starting to think you'd finally gotten bored of me." Joran exhaled through his nose. "You assume I find you interesting." Alex grinned. "You're here, aren't you?" Joran had no answer to that. A silent betrayal. The moment of uneasy silence was broken by a sudden, sharp beeping from Joran's wrist communicator. He tapped it. A voice crackled through. "Commander, there's been an incident." Joran frowned. "What kind of incident?" A pause. "General Kareth has ordered the execution of the human prisoner." The words hit him like a physical blow. His blood turned to ice. His mind roared in protest before he could even think of a logical response. "Effective immediately, sir," the soldier added, voice hesitant. "Orders just came through. He wants them dead within the hour." Joran's gaze snapped to Alex. They were watching him closely, unaware of what had just been said. But somehow, they knew. Their smile had faded. Their posture was still relaxed, but their eyes, sharp and intelligent, locked onto him with quiet curiosity. "What's wrong, Joran?" He clenched his jaw. His mind screamed at him to say nothing, to let things unfold as they should. But the thought of walking away, of allowing Kareth to erase them, to silence that defiant fire in their eyes forever, It was unbearable. Zoran turned toward the cell door, making a decision he could never undo. "Get up," he ordered. Alex raised an eyebrow. "Why? You finally giving me a tour of this place?" Zoran didn't answer. Instead, he walked over and, in a swift motion, disabled the energy restraints on their wrists. Alex blinked, flexing their fingers as the restraints powered down. "Well, that's new." Zoran grabbed their arm and pulled them up. "No more talking. We are leaving." Alex stared at him. "You're breaking me out." Zoran's expression remained unreadable. "If you wish to live, do exactly as I say." For the first time since they met, Alex looked genuinely surprised. And then, slowly, a grin spread across their face. "Guess I was right," they said. "You do like me." Zoran didn't respond. He didn't need to. The Great Escape. The warship's halls were eerily quiet. Too quiet. Zoran moved with calculated speed, leading Alex through the less-traveled pathways. He had memorized every security route, every blind spot, every potential exit strategy in case of emergency. He had never expected to use that knowledge for this. Alex kept pace beside him, moving surprisingly well despite their injuries. Their silence was unnerving. No jokes, no smirks, just focused intensity. "How much time before they figure out I'm gone?" Alex whispered. Zoran's voice was low. "Minutes." A loud alarm suddenly blared through the halls. "Or less." "Attention. Prisoner escape in progress." Zoran swore under his breath. "Move." They ran. The chase. The moment they turned a corner, 3 Salvarian soldiers appeared, weapons drawn. "Commander." Zoran moved before they could process what was happening. His fists struck with precise brutality, disabling them before they could react. Alex stared. That was impressive. "Keep moving," Zoran ordered. They sprinted toward the hangar. The massive bay doors loomed ahead, rows of fighter ships lined up like silent predators waiting to be unleashed into space. "Do you even have a plan?" Alex panted. "Yes," Zoran said. "Steal a ship. Escape. Survive." Alex let out a breathless laugh. Straight to the point. "I like it." The moment they entered the hangar, however, Zoran knew they were out of time. Kareth was already there, waiting. The final confrontation. The general stood in front of a squad of heavily armed Salvarian soldiers, his silver eyes filled with something dangerous. "Betrayal," he said, his voice cold, amused. "I thought you were stronger than this, Zoran." Zoran didn't hesitate. He stepped forward, positioning himself between Alex and the soldiers. "Let them go, Kareth." The general smirked. "And what do you think will happen next? That I will simply let you walk away?" Zoran's hands curled into fists. "I do not wish to fight you." Kareth's smile widened. "But you will." The order was silent, but the soldiers moved instantly. Shots fired. Zoran was faster. In a blur of motion, he deflected an incoming blast, his energy blade slicing through the nearest attacker. The hangar erupted into chaos as Alex dove for cover, snatching a fallen blaster and firing back. Zoran moved through the battlefield with ruthless efficiency, cutting down soldiers, dodging fire. He could hear Alex fighting too. Quick, precise shots, no wasted movements. They were skilled, more than a simple soldier. Who were they, really? Zoran didn't have time to think about it. He lunged at Kareth, their blades colliding in a shower of sparks. The general was powerful, but Zoran was faster. A brutal strike to Kareth's ribs sent him staggering. "Foolish," the general hissed. "You throw away everything for a human." Zoran's grip on his blade tightened. Perhaps I am learning what everything truly means. Before Kareth could strike again, Zoran grabbed Alex and hurled them into the nearest ship. "Go," he barked, slamming the cockpit shut behind them. Alex barely had time to react before Zoran vaulted into the pilot's seat, fingers flying across the controls. The ship's engines roared to life. Kareth's voice echoed over the comms. "You will not escape." Joran glanced at Alex. "Hold on." The ship blasted out of the hangar, fire and chaos left in their wake. The war within. The stolen ship tore through the cold expanse of space, its engines burning bright as it fled from the Selvarian warship. Inside the cockpit, alarms blared, warnings flashing across the screens, tracking signals locking onto them. Joran's hands flew across the controls, expertly maneuvering the ship through the asteroid field ahead. The ship rocked as enemy fire grazed its hull. "I hate to rush you, but they're still shooting at us," Alex said from the co-pilot's seat, gripping the edge of the console as another blast barely missed them. Zoran didn't respond. His mind was calculating. Angles, speed, evasive maneuvers. The Selvarian warships were faster, but he knew how they operated. He was one of them. Or at least, he had been. "Hang on," he ordered. He twisted the controls sharply, sending the ship into a tight spin, weaving through the asteroid belt like a shadow. The enemy fire became sporadic, their tracking systems struggling to keep up. Then, silence. The red lights on the scanners blinked off. They had lost them. Joran exhaled, fingers finally stilling on the controls. Behind him, Alex let out a breathless laugh. "Okay, that was intense." Zoran didn't respond. His mind was already somewhere else, because he knew this was only the beginning. The weight of betrayal. As the adrenaline faded, the reality of what he had done settled in. He had betrayed his people. Kareth would never let this go. The Selvarians did not tolerate weakness, and they never forgave traitors. He had no home to return to. Zoran clenched his fists. He had chosen this path, but he had not considered what came next. Alex, now free of their restraints, stretched their arms. "So, what's the plan, Captain?" Joran turned to them, his voice sharp. "You do not get to joke about this." Alex held up their hands. "Hey, I'm just saying. You broke me out. We barely escaped a warship, and now we're in the middle of nowhere. What's next?" Joran didn't have an answer. He turned his gaze to the control panel, checking their coordinates. They were far from Selvarian-controlled space, but that wouldn't last long. They needed a place to hide. Alex studied him for a moment, their expression shifting. "You're not used to not having orders, are you?" Joran's jaw tightened. "I have spent my entire life following orders." "Yeah, I figured." Alex leaned back in their seat, arms crossed. "So why'd you break them?" Silence. Joran didn't want to answer, didn't want to admit the truth. That he didn't know. That something about Alex had made him hesitate, made him question everything. He stood abruptly. "I will check the ship's inventory. See if we have supplies." Alex watched him go, their expression unreadable. A dangerous revelation. The cargo hold was small, filled with crates of supplies. Joran opened one, checking for rations, weapons, anything useful. His mind was restless. He had fought countless battles, survived impossible odds. And yet this feeling of uncertainty, was unlike anything he had ever faced. The sound of footsteps made him turn. Alex stood in the doorway, arms crossed. "Something's bothering you." Joran looked away. "You are imagining things." Alex sighed. "Okay, let's talk about something else then. Like how you fight better than any Selvarian I've seen." Joran frowned. "That is hardly surprising. I am a commander." "Right, but it's more than that," Alex said, stepping closer. "You fight like someone who isn't just following orders. You think ahead, you adapt. That's rare." Zoran stayed silent. Alex studied him. "You weren't just any soldier, were you?" Joran finally met their gaze. "I was bred for war. I knew nothing else." Alex tilted their head. "And now?" He hesitated, and that hesitation was the answer. Alex nodded, stepping closer. "You don't know what you are anymore." Joran's hands clenched at his sides. What does it matter? Because I've seen this before, Alex said softly. You're at war with yourself, Joran. And I know what that feels like. Their words hit him deeper than he expected. Before he could respond, the ship's alarm blared again. A proximity alert. Joran rushed back to the cockpit, Alex right behind him. He scanned the readings. A small vessel was approaching. No Selvarian markings, no official identification. A rogue ship. Pirates. Alex peered over his shoulder. Well, that's not good. Joran activated the ship's weapons. They are scanning us, looking for weakness. Alex let out a dry laugh. Great, just what we need. The pirate ship hailed them. A crackling voice came through the speakers. Unidentified vessel, surrender now, and we might let you live. Alex raised an eyebrow. Wow, friendly guys. Joran's grip on the controls tightened. He had faced worse than pirates, but their ship was low on fuel, low on weapons. A fight here was a risk. He turned to Alex. You know how to handle a blaster. Alex smirked. Better than most. Joran handed them a weapon. Then prove it. Alex's fingers curled around the handle, their grin widening. Gladly. As the pirate ship latched onto them, the final battle began. The final stand. The ship trembled as the pirate vessel latched on, sealing its boarding clamps with a deep metallic groan. The lights flickered, warning alarms flashing red as the pressure between the two ships equalized. Joran didn't flinch. He had been in worse situations. He had led wars, fought against impossible odds, and survived. But this time, he wasn't fighting for his empire. He was fighting for something else. For freedom. For Alex. A voice crackled through the comms, smug and cruel. Last chance, little rebels. Surrender now, and we might let you live long enough to be useful. Alex, standing beside Joran, checked the energy levels on their stolen blaster. You know, they muttered. I hate when bad guys talk like that. They never actually mean it. Joran's grip tightened around his own weapon, a sleek Selvarian energy blade that hummed with controlled power. They are not here to negotiate, he said. They want blood. Alex nodded. Well, then let's not disappoint them. A loud hiss filled the air as the ship's inner hatch decompressed. The boarding door ripped open, and the pirates stormed inside. It was time to fight. The battle for survival. Joran moved first. His blade cut through the first attacker before they could even react, slicing through their armor like paper. A second pirate raised a rifle. Joran twisted, dodged, and slammed his elbow into their throat, crushing their windpipe. Alex was already in motion, firing precise shots, their movements sharp and practiced. Too practiced. Joran noticed it between dodging enemy fire. Alex wasn't just a survivor. They were a warrior. You are trained, Joran muttered as he ducked behind cover. Alex fired a shot that hit a pirate between the eyes. What gave it away? Joran sliced through another attacker before responding. You are too fast, too precise. This is not your first fight. Alex flashed him a grin. Yeah, well, you don't survive in a galaxy like this without picking up a few tricks. The way they said it, casual, effortless, yet hiding something deeper, made Joran wonder. Who was Alex, really? The battle raged on, but the pirates were losing. They hadn't expected a Selvarian commander and a mysterious human to fight back so fiercely. One by one, they fell, until only their captain remained. A massive alien with cybernetic implants, a jagged scar running across his mechanical eye. He stepped forward, holding a thermal detonator in one clawed hand. The air grew tense. Impressive, the pirate captain growled. But if I go down, so does your ship. The detonator's countdown ticked down. 5 seconds. Alex and Joran moved at the same time. Joran lunged, his blade slicing toward the detonator, while Alex fired a single, perfect shot. The detonator fell. Boom. The explosion shook the ship, but not from the detonator. Joran had severed its trigger at the last second, deactivating it. The pirate captain collapsed, lifeless. Silence. The battle was over. Escape or the end. The ship was damaged, warning lights flickering as sparks rained from the ceiling. Joran moved to the controls, scanning the damage. The engines were still operational, but barely. "We need to get out of here," he said. Alex slid into the co-pilot's seat, glancing at the readings. "Agreed. I'd rather not stick around to see if they have friends." Joran started the launch sequence, the ship groaning as it pulled free from the pirate vessel. The moment they cleared the debris field, he pushed the thrusters to maximum. A moment of quiet settled between them. Then Alex sighed. "Okay. So, that was fun." Joran shot them a look. "That was reckless." Alex grinned. "But we survived, didn't we?" Joran studied them. "You are not what you pretend to be." Alex's smile faltered, just for a second. "Maybe not," they admitted. "But neither are you." The weight of those words hung between them. Joran had been a commander, a warrior, a loyal soldier. Now he was a traitor to his empire. An outcast. But strangely, he didn't feel lost. For the first time in his life, he felt free. Alex leaned back, watching him with that same knowing smirk. "So, Commander, what's the plan now?" Joran's eyes turned toward the stars. The future was uncertain. They were fugitives, hunted by the Salvarians and whatever else lurked in the galaxy. But he was no longer afraid of the unknown. A slow, dangerous smile crossed his lips. "We survive." And with that, they vanished into the stars.